All right, it is 4:30. I'm calling the meeting to order. I acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees, the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the question and answer function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that pursuant to Section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016 is amended, November 28th, 2023 regular meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at Municipal Hall 380 Campbell Street in Tofino. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Also, through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that the November 28th, 2023 regular council agenda be adopted. Seeing no objections, that motion is carried. Oh, sorry, here we go. 4.2. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I recommend that item 4.1 to 4.2, the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held November 28, 2023, be adopted. Seeing no objections, that motion is carried. Do we have public comment on agenda items, Mr. Call?
Thank you, Mayor. I will now do an open call for the public for comment. If there's anyone online attending via Zoom and would like to make a comment, you can now do so using the Q&A function on Zoom. You will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call for the online question or comment period, going once, calling twice, calling 3 times. There are currently no online questions.
Super. Okay. I'm going to limit my mayor's report to a statement regarding provincial short-term rental regulations. We've had a lot of correspondence in the news, and it's on many people's minds, certainly council and staff. So I'm just going to read this out here. I'd like to take the time to address BC's Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act, tabled by the province of British Columbia on October 16th. 2023. Tofino is a unique community in a place that has become increasingly desirable to live and visit. Like much of the province, our community is facing significant housing challenges. Affordable long-term housing continues to be a top priority for this council. BC's recently tabled Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act marks a significant step towards achieving our shared goal of sustainable housing solutions. The legislation tabled with the province has several implications for Tofino that I would like to offer some clarity. Immediately after this legislation gains royal assent within the coming months, increased fines and tickets up to $50,000 may be imposed on illegal short-term rentals in Tofino. These fines will be backed by provincial enforcement. On May 1st, 2024, legal non-conforming protections will no longer be applicable to short-term rentals in all BC municipalities, including Tofino. Starting in summer 2024, data sharing will begin between the province, the District of Tofino, and short-term rental platform operators, including Airbnb, etc. This will make it easier for the province and the district to identify and enforce non-compliant STR operations. In late 2024, the province will launch an STR registry and will require platforms to remove listings without valid provincial registry numbers. The province will impose a principal residency requirement, which will limit short-term rentals to the host's principal residence, plus 1 secondary suite or accessory dwelling unit. Though currently exempt, communities under 10,000 population, as well as resort communities, may choose to opt into the principal residency requirement. I would like to emphasize that the district will fully embrace the increased provincial STR enforcement measures, which in and of themselves will make a positive impact on our community and on Tofino's housing supply. Those who hold a business license for a short-term rental with legal non-conforming status and choose to renew their business license for 2024, they will not be issued a refund should their business be impacted. For all legal non-conforming status business inquiries, please contact our bylaw services. Prior to this legislation announcement, the District of Tofino has taken proactive measures and determined efforts to address the growing housing challenges in Tofino, including the creation of a full-time business license inspector position to proactively enforce illegal short-term rentals, a provision that requires business license holders to provide long-term accommodations on vacation rental properties, caretaker suites, or cabins. The restoration of the Tofino Housing Corporation in 2017, followed by significant affordable housing developments, including the Headwaters project, which, approaching completion within the year, will increase local housing stock by about 10%. A 3% tax on online accommodation providers, Airbnb, VRBO, that is provided to the Tofino Housing Corporation. A nearly $3 million application to the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund, a limit on new tourist accommodation zonings and provisions on new developments. Further to this, in late 2022, Council directed staff to explore possible amendments to the zoning regulations bylaw and to conduct a short-term rental review to specifically explore how increasing STR restrictions could help address the housing challenges in Tofino. These preliminary discussions included both zoning and principal residency requirement changes. This work has been paused while staff await detailed regulations for the province's aforementioned legislation. Council recognizes there's more work to be done to address housing needs in this community. Council is also aware of the impact provincial regulations may have on residents' livelihoods, residents' lived experience, housing equity, our local economy, and more. Coming weeks, further details of the proposed provincial regulations are expected to be announced. Council is awaiting those specifics. As a resort municipality, Tofino has the option to opt in to the principal residency requirement. Prior to any decision, there will be a thorough public consultation process to allow voices in this community to be heard. Stay tuned for this engagement window, which I encourage all residents to participate in. In the meantime, Council and staff have engaged in a conflict of interest examination to ensure the district's decision-making process regarding this matter remains transparent and unbiased. I would like to express the district's gratitude to those who have written to myself and Council regarding the STR legislation. Robust community feedback is vitally important as we navigate the complexities of housing policies and their implications for our community as a whole. And together we can successfully navigate these opportunities and challenges to ensure our community thrives and becomes more equitable and livable for all. Thank you. It's nice to see everybody here. That concludes my mayor's report. We have no delegations, but we do have correspondence. So we're going to go into correspondence. 9.1, correspondence from Anita and Katelyn, grade 9 students from Salmon with a new flag design. Comes from council. No? Nobody's biting?
I appreciate the industry and artistry of the young person and their initiative to submit a flag design for Tofino. I'll just, for their benefit, I would have to say that if Tofino was going to change their flag, we would enter into probably a design competition or put a call out or somehow have a process around it. So I think if we just accepted flags as they came in, we'd be changing flags fairly often in Tofino. But I would like to express my appreciation for their initiative anyways.
Super. Yeah. You else want to comment? No?
It's very nice. They put a lot of hard work into it. You can tell.
It's great. It's nice to think grade 9 students in Salmon are thinking about our flag. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks to Anita and Katelyn. We have correspondence 9.2 from the Nanaimo Regional Hospital District with a request for a letter of support.
We should write a letter of support. I think anything that helps people avoid traveling to Victoria to get treatment is very positive.
Super, and I was going to look up to Councillor Steer. I know there was some discussion of whether hospital would in any way impact our own hospital endeavors. You have a comment for us, Councillor Steer?
Yeah, just with the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Hospital Board, of which I sit, the discussion around the support for this initiative from the NRHD is very much supported at that level, recognizing the importance of the proposed. Most of the proposals, letters of support, are things that are already in motion. This is just a further support, which includes a cardiac catheterization lab, a patient tower, a cancer center, and a high acuity unit. So these are all incredibly important for the West Coast as well, and will no way impede the priorities that the ACRD Regional Hospital Board has set forth. So I fully support the letter and the recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Steer. Any further comments from council? I do have a recommended motion here. Motion. No? Okay. Then from the chair, I move that staff provide a letter of support directed to Health Minister Adrian Dix for the Nanaimo Regional Hospital District priority capital projects, including the new patient tower, cardiac catheterization lab to be located at the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor McMaster. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Super, none opposed. Motion's carried. Great. 9.3, correspondence from Tla-o-qui-aht First Trust, and this is the vital signs report. Comments from council?
I think it would be good to have the First Trust attend as a delegation to present the report to council. Hoping by that time every member of council has read the new report.
Super. Comments from council? Motion, would staff like a motion for us direct them? So from the chair then, unless you would like to do it, Councillor McMaster?
I'll move that the Tla-o-qui-aht Biosphere Trust be invited to attend as a delegation at an upcoming council meeting to present the latest vital signs report.
Second. There you go. All in favor? Not opposed, motion's carried. Okay, correspondence from Honorable Ravi Kahlon, Minister of Housing, new legislation to support local government housing initiatives. Comments from council? The Minister of Housing has been busy, I gotta say. A lot of stuff coming from the Ministry of Housing, incredible stuff. So I just am very appreciative and supportive of much of the new legislation. Seeing nothing from council, we'll move on. We have 9.5, correspondence from the public, RE short-term rental legislation. And this is, we've got a lot, of course, there's more piling in, and we're going to be, I'm sure, hearing from the public on this issue coming up. But I will open it up for comments from council, and we can discuss a possible way forward. Councillors?
I personally am very encouraged by seeing this much correspondence. I think it's great when people are disengaged about something that may come before council. And looking forward to the public consultation. I hope that everyone maintains this level of interest and keeps engaging with council on agenda items.
Any other comments from council? Expecting a lot.
I guess I would just offer an apology to everybody for not responding to all of these. They're definitely coming in hot and heavy, and we're definitely reading all of them. It's difficult to reply to everybody because obviously we can't engage and say that we're leaning one way or another. And so it would just be a little tedious to just be like, thank you for your letter, thank you for your letter, but we are very, very appreciative of all of the variety of viewpoints that are coming in and the amount of detail and time that people are taking to really emphasize their various points, because it's very easy from my position personally to just be like, well, this doesn't necessarily directly impact my life, so it can be hard to put myself in other people's shoes in these things. So the only way of doing that is to actually hear from the people that are in these various positions. So it's greatly appreciated, and for anybody who I have not hit reply to, they have all been read and they will continue to be read.
Any comments from council?
Sure, I'll go. I just really appreciate how civil everyone's being. I know there's a lot of fear out there, and people feel passionate about it, but I haven't read any that have been really rude or disrespectful. I really appreciate that.
I did, Councillor Steer, nothing from you. I see no hand up. Okay. Now I did have, there's such a level of uncertainty, and as we get close to our last meeting of the year and into the next year, and we're still waiting for the specifics of the actual legislation. I know that people are looking for some certainty in process, and as short-term rental operators are starting to fill up their bookings and wondering what's going to happen next year. I did come prepared with an option for council, but I'm going to throw it out here. We do not have to make this motion. It's just an option, and that is that to provide certainty that council's decision to opt in or out of the principal residence requirements within the year of 2024. But to provide some leeway for people in the transition year. Next year will be a transition year, one way or another. That council if council does choose to opt in, to opt in after December 31st, 2024. Now that's generally an idea of giving people certainty for next year, one way or another, but signaling that the council will make a decision. So that's I'm going to throw that out to council. Now we do not have to make this motion now. We've got certainly got one more meeting, I believe, in the year, regular council meeting, and maybe a cow, although that might be sparse right now. So I'm going to throw it out to council for debate.
I'm not prepared to discuss it. I mean, just being put out there like this, I think more thought needs to go into this.
Okay.
I think the correspondence that we received so far and is still coming in, I think on a daily basis, it really underscores both the importance but the complexity of the issue. And there's voices I know that we haven't heard from yet in the correspondence that I would like to be able to weigh into my decision making on it. We haven't examined the details of the legislation either, so I think the part of your proposed that council will make a decision to opt in
Or not.
I think that is abundantly clear that we have to make that decision at some point. Announcing now exactly when or how we're going to make that decision, I think is a bit early in the process. Given that we haven't, there are many more voices to hear, and I'm sure there's many that still want to weigh in. But I think it's as your suggestion points out, it's important that we do move as quickly as possible. So we need a little more time to know a few more things, I think, before we make that decision. But as you say, people need answers for the upcoming year. So, yeah, if we have to have a special meeting to whatever, to make that decision, or we have to follow our meeting schedule necessarily, if it's that important to council, and that's up to all of council. To decide on the importance of that. But I think it's a little early in the process to whatever, lay out how the process going. Yeah.
All right. Other comments from council?
Well, I definitely feel, oh, should
Please go ahead.
I definitely feel the desire from people, from the letter writers, that I think that they would like some clarity. So, I mean, I would lean towards seconding the motion, but if council feels that the time isn't appropriate, I understand that as well. Maybe we do need more information. But yeah, I feel like the public kind of would like a bit of a direction of where we're going, what day this would take effect.
Okay.
I've given it some thought, because, I do understand at any point, people needing the certainty for that and organizing businesses a year in advance. However, after looking at things and the fact that the legislation is not yet approved assent, we don't know when we will be able to discuss the legislation in full. So I'm hesitant to accept a time, not because I think we would do it sooner, but because I think it could take longer. And so, just recently, that this decision I came to today was that until we know for sure what we're talking about, I'm hesitant to put a timeline on it.
Okay. Councillor Seer.
Thank you, Mayor Law. Just so that I understand the proposed motion, what you're proposing is for clarity for the 2024 season is that any decision that is made by council will not take effect until December of 2024. Am I understanding that correct? The audio is a little off, so I didn't get the
Yeah,
full...
that was basically the idea, is that to give people certainty for next year, as it's a transition year. That yes, council would make a decision, and then if council did choose to opt in, which is the only part of the legislation that we actually have control over, just to be clear. There are other ways, to be clear, there are other ways of dealing with short-term rentals, which we haven't yet explored because we're waiting for that, including zoning. But the one overarching question is to opt in or not, and then if council had decided to opt in, it wouldn't take effect until after December 31st, 2024. That's just a suggestion to give people some sort of clarity for the year coming. But I'm open to council's decision. I certainly I think I've got enough. There you go. You can make a comment on that, and then I think I've got enough feedback from council that I won't read this motion. And that perhaps we can come back at a next regular council meeting and discuss it again.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I certainly support the direction that you were going in terms of providing that clarity for the upcoming season for folks one way or the other. I do appreciate that. And until we have further information, so I can hear the rest of council in the direction they're moving. So in terms of the support for this motion, maybe holding off may be the appropriate at this point in time, but I would like to give clarity for people for the upcoming season as soon as we can.
Great. Okay. So what I'll do is, I won't read this motion now. We'll revisit it at the next regular council meeting, perhaps with a little more discussion and background. And at that time, we'll have our legal opinions back as well. So super. Okay. Any other comments from council on correspondence from public regarding short-term rental legislation? Okay, seeing none, well then we will move on. We have 10.1, an invited presentation from Brad Parcell, Executive Director, Tourism Tofino, regarding Tourism Tofino 2024 budget and tactical plan.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a tough act to follow, the short-term rental conversation. We'll see what we can do. Our goal here today is to walk council through Tourism Tofino's 2024 tactical plan as required by the province. I'm assuming I can. Oh yeah, there you go. So the tactical plan that's attached in the agenda package, and most of you folks have probably seen this before, but it is three main sections: the 5-year strategic overview. So that's the overarching 5-year strategic plan that Tourism Tofino is working off. Section 2 is where we get into the actual tactics and objectives for 2024. So how we're actually going to execute on those strategic priorities. And that's what I'm going to focus on for the presentation today. And then section 3 lays out the 2024 budget. Both the tactical plan and the budget have, of course, been approved by the Tourism Tofino board. It's of no small task trying to fit a whole year's worth of plans and tactics into a 10-minute presentation. So I'm going to whip through this at some speed, but feel free to ask me any questions at the end. The province separates our tactical plan into 4 main areas, and that's destination marketing, visitor services, destination and product experience management, which we call internally destination stewardship, and administration. There haven't really been huge changes in our approach to marketing, visitor services, and administration, but I do want to spend a little bit more time on the destination stewardship side. So let's jump into it. So marketing, the overarching 5-year strategic plan speaks the main goal with our marketing, as everyone's aware, is to increase non-peak visitation to sustainably grow tourism. So we're talking driving visitation from October to May. We're pretty good from June till September. So that continues to be the overarching goal. And then in terms of the tactics on the ground, once again, we'll be implementing an integrated delineated fall, winter, and spring campaign in 2024. We're also we're continuing to implement incentive and business meetings marketing. So trying to get corporate business here, which drives visitation in non-peak times and midweek. One of the biggest changes in 2024 is really going all in on Indigenous content and Indigenous messaging in consultation with primarily Tla-o-qui-aht and First Nation, including sharing Indigenous experiences, history, responsible visitor messaging, which we'll talk about in a little bit, travel park allies, etc. After this summer with Highway 4, we are doubling down on trying to promote alternative means of transport into Tofino with air travel, but also how people get around when they're in destination and leaving their cars behind, and leveraging partnerships with Destination BC and Destination Canada to reach our long-haul key markets. So most of Tourism Tofino's marketing spend, as you'll see in the plan, still goes to BC, Alberta, and Washington State. And then we partner up with these other organizations to reach our secondary markets of Ontario, California, the UK, and Germany. Quickly, just going to continue to build out our social channels, our own channels. We experimented with TikTok in 2023, and we are going to launch an organic TikTok account, developing new social media content both in-house and in partnership with content creators. Pitching and hosting travel media with a focus on Indigenous tourism coverage in 2024. But probably the biggest project happening in marketing is a brand new Tourism Tofino website, which is currently being built as we speak. And we are aiming to launch that in May of 2024 in time for the summer season, with a heavy focus on new content, including itineraries and as I said, new Indigenous content in a much more immersive and seamless user experience than we have on the current website. And then continuing to support all the events in non-peak times in Tofino with marketing support. So that's a quick flyby through destination marketing. For visitor services, if we look at the overarching 5-year plan, there's some goals and objectives laid out there in terms of increasing visitor spending, longer stays, repeat visits, and building a sense of place in the Tofino Visitor Centre. And in terms of the actual tactics where the rubber meets the road, and each of these have sort of measurables and KPIs that are laid out in the agenda package. But obviously, first and foremost, making sure our staff are experts on all things Tofino and can speak to, to speak to the destination, particularly on the Indigenous side of things. Really trying to convince folks who come through the visitor center in the summer that they should be here in the winter time, and really putting winter experiences in front of them as much as we can. Continuing to promote visitor services in Tofino. We operate a mobile visitor services here in the village and also in the beaches at certain points through the summer. We've done a lot of activation in 2023 around in the visitor center in terms of workshops and interpretation, and we want to continue to do that into 2024, especially with that Indigenous tourism lens, and continuing to feature local products and local artists in the visitor center. So not a massive change from what we were doing in 2023. Destination stewardship, like I said, is kind of one of our big focus areas right now, and there's quite a lot of new initiatives in this category. So I want to kind of jump into here. Again, for context, the overarching plan, has goals and objectives related to this. Including, continuing to develop experience that connects visitors to nature and culture, and reducing the impact of tourism, which we take quite seriously, as well as coordinating the development and management of tourism with the District of Tofino and others, and improving connections within our industry community, First Nations and partners. So jumping into that a little bit, we are in the process of developing a dark skies or stargazing content, which will kind of complement storm watching. We actually get quite a bit of feedback. People come here in the winter for storms and they're disappointed when they don't happen and they get good weather. And so there's a real opportunity with the lack of light pollution on the West Coast to really lean into that. It's very specific, but it's something we're working on in 2024. We obviously want to continue to develop and package unique winter experiences and winter events and animation to drive visitation when we really need to see it here in Tofino. We are obviously very committed to financially supporting and promoting the Tla-o-qui-aht Travel Park Allies program. We have it on fairly good authority, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but Tla-o-qui-aht is likely bringing back the Nga-u cultural experience in spring of 2024. So we want to make sure that we're financially supporting that and promoting that, as well as any other new products or experiences that come online in 2024 in terms of Indigenous tourism. As we talked about, developing new Indigenous content in partnership with the First Nations in the area for the new website. Another big focus for us is building capacity in Indigenous tourism on the West Coast, and how we can create mentorship and professional development opportunities for First Nation members, including First Nations youth. There's so much here. I apologize, this isn't the sexiest slide deck that we've presented, but there's a lot of content to get through. Continuing to work with our event partners, we've talked about that. One of the big projects for us in 2024 is trying to reimagine responsible visitor messaging and frontline staff education under the umbrella of Tla-o-qui-aht First Nations ESARC pledge, which they've developed independently over the last couple of years. So we're really looking to that as the vehicle to convey messaging, content, and collateral to visitors. There's going to be some big focuses in 2024. We learned a lot about water conservation messaging in 2023 that we'll be working very closely with the district on in 2024, as well as all of our usual stuff, know before you go, leave no trace, Coast Smart, and all that good stuff. We want to continue to promote visitor volunteer opportunities so visitors can give back to the destination while here. Things like the Washed Up Wednesdays beach cleans, for example. Another major project for Tourism Tofino in 2024 is pursuing a sustainability certification for Tofino as a destination, which is going to unlock the ability for businesses in Tofino to go through a sustainability certification for free. That is from the responsible tourism industry. It's called the Tourism Biosphere Certification, not to be confused with the UNESCO Biosphere region here in the Tla-o-qui-aht Sound, but obviously very, very complementary in terms of the values. We'll also be executing our workforce attraction campaign in the spring of 2024 to try to address Tofino's ongoing labor shortage issues in the industry. A tourism master plan, you'll recall, was in the tactical plan for 2023, but for obvious reasons related to Highway 4 and water and capacity in both organizations, that has been pushed into 2024. And then a lot of the other stuff there is really just remaining engaged with our industry, with our community, trying to continue to improve local understanding of tourism and the value of tourism in Tofino and how it can have a more positive impact for all people in our community. as well as continuing the tourism scholarship funds that we established in 2023 to encourage local youth to pursue post-secondary education in tourism. And I know this is a lot, but we're almost there. Continuing to build on our new look Tofino Community Tourism newsletter. Over the summer, we completely revamped that to be a little bit more user-friendly, and anyone in the community is welcome to sign up to that newsletter. It keeps you in the loop of all things tourism in Tofino. As part of the website project, we will be launching a delineated corporate website that speaks specifically to the industry and to our members, as well as the more visitor-facing website as well. And then finally, the final section is administration. And really what we're talking about here is operating with transparency, accountability, and alignment with the objectives of the community as laid out in municipal plans. The big one here for us is, again, based on what we went through this summer, is working really closely with the District of Tofino and Emergency Services on crisis communications and emergency planning. We found out, especially this summer, I mean, Tourism Tofino has a huge reach and a really large responsibility to communicate emergency visitor messaging in times of need. We have started and will finish the economic impact study of tourism too. So most of you will be familiar with that study that was done in 2018. And we are refreshing that at the moment, and that'll be launched in fall of next year. Obviously, we continue to want to operate in an environmentally sustainable manner as an organization. We're currently pursuing the Wild Safe BC Pledge, and we are ocean friendly certified with Surfrider. And of course, we continue to contribute to the District of Tofino's wastewater treatment plant in 2024. And finally, just a couple of slides there with just a snapshot of the budget for 2024. It goes into much more detail in the actual plan. But just pointing out, and thank you for bearing with me, I've gone a little over, that we're still very much reliant on MRDT. It's 91% of our funding, but we are growing that green wedge every year. We've doubled it in the last 3 years in terms of generating revenue in other ways. And then very finally, that's the breakdown of expenses when you put it into those buckets of what the province is looking for. So 35% to marketing, 21% to destination management, 18% to visitor services, 12% for admin, which is getting lower every year, and then obviously the 14% going to the wastewater treatment plant. So that is, in a very, very quick flyer, everything Tourism Tofino will be working on the community's behalf for 2024.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Purcell. I very much appreciate that presentation. Cool. Comments from council? Yes, Councilor Salmon.
I'm really excited about the stargazing. I feel like it's gonna increase awareness about how important our dark sky policy is.
100%. Yeah. There's a really cool certification that Jasper and places like that have gone through, but it's quite intense. So we are exploring that. But at the meantime, we can still start talking about it and making it a thing. But yeah, thanks to the District of Tofino bylaw, we can make that a part of the experience.
I've enjoyed seeing the increased messaging through the post, sharing, you know, the First Nations histories and names for places. And that's been really nice to see.
I think Tofino and the west coast of Vancouver Island have a huge opportunity nationally in the Indigenous tourism space, and we're really leaning into that. So thank you for that comment.
I picked up your brochure on the ferries. It was fantastic. I was so proud.
Yeah.
I sat there for 10 minutes reading it. And I want to echo stargazing. I tell everybody that visits Tofino in the summer that goes on the beach from the city, they tend to want to have a flashlight. It's like, turn your flashlight off. And then they find the bioluminescence and they find the stars, and they're transformed. So hopefully that message gets out and that works. I'm looking forward to it. So great job. Also, by the way. Seeing no more comments from council, we will move on. We have council member appointments for a report from Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mayor Law. So on 10.2, we have a library appointment, Vancouver Island Regional Library Board of Trustees. The current term expires as of December 31st of this year. And we're looking for one council member to chair and one council member as an alternate. So
Great, and I believe, just for clarity, our current, or outgoing or current is, Councillor Sawyer and Councillor McMaster as an alternate. Council?
Just putting it out there, I'm happy to continue on with next year's term. I've really enjoyed my time with the board and look forward to continuing the work and discussions that have been taking place.
Councillor McMaster, would you want to continue?
Yeah, I'm happy to continue. I haven't really had to do anything because I've always attended all the meetings, so I'm happy to continue as an alternate.
Okay, well, seeing nobody else jumping up for this, then let's put the Councillor Sawyer and Councillor McMaster in as the appointee, trustee, and alternate. Who would like to read?
You do that?
Go ahead, Councillor.
I'll move that Councillor Sawyer be appointed as trustee and Councillor McMaster be appointed as alternate to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board of Trustees beginning January 1st, 2023 for a term ending the earliest of council appoints another council member, the council member ceases to hold office, and the council member the council member is removed for cause as provided under the Library Act, December 31st, 2020.
Two separate, and there's a typo in there, friendly amendments 2024. Correct. All right, we have Councillor Thomas seconded. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks for your work, but 10.3, we have a single-use item regulation amendment, plastic water bottles 1 liter and less. We have a report from Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mayor Law. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening I will be presenting to you an update on single-use item regulation amendment notes on plastic water bottles 1 liter and less. So a bit of background here. In 2018, single-use item regulation bylaw was introduced to council, and that regulation bylaw was focusing on plastic bags. We learned a lot during that process on ministerial approval and legislative processes on concurrent jurisdictions. In 2020, Tofino was the first municipality in British Columbia to ban single-use plastic utensils. Applaud current and previous councils on that. And the province later adopted that bylaw to allow all municipalities in British Columbia to make that decision for themselves. So an example of local action here that had provincial benefits. Most recently in August, Surfrider came before council and presented in front of council with a recommendation to include single-use plastic water bottles 1 liter and less in this current regulation bylaw. They noted that over 60,000 plastic bottles were found on Tofino and Euclid beaches since 2015, and 60 to 70% of plastic water bottles are not recycled and end up in landfills or waterways in the area. Council instructed staff at that moment to determine our current authority around prohibiting the sale of single-use plastic water bottles 1 liter and less, which staff went back and performs research, and I can share with you today that this amendment would require ministerial approval to prohibit that in the District of Tofino. So just zooming out quickly here, this is not a prohibition on all plastic bottles or even all water plastic bottles. It's just water bottles 1 liter and less. So other bottles will still remain available for sale. So quick discussion here. I don't need to remind council that there are countless examples of compelling environmental leadership here in Clayoquot Sound's history. Throughout the years, current and previous councils, First Nations leaders, and everyday Tofino citizens have stood up to make a change locally that has had impacts globally. For this current prohibition, Surfriders shared with us multiple letters of support from local First Nations in the region. And 71 businesses in Tofino and Q&amp already currently observe this voluntary ban. And they proactively offer to fill reusable water bottles for customers and non-customers at their businesses. I also wanted to note that the Co-op grocery store here in Tofino has several alternatives available, including a water refill station in store. They also sell reusable aluminum water bottles, which are much more recyclable in store, and they have affordable options over 1 liter in plastic. So that's a 1.5 liter water bottle for $1.69. Continuing on to alternatives, the District of Tofino has invested in water refill stations throughout the district, along with their partners. There are currently 12 water refill stations in the District of Tofino, and 2 additional water refill stations are currently under construction, one at the Multi-Cox Bay washroom and an additional one at the Village Green. So again, this is in conjunction with many partners to make those available. Finally, I just wanted to highlight some proposed exemptions in the bylaw if council is to proceed. Staff would like to note some emergency exemptions in case of a emergency operations center activation or a state and local emergency declaration. Also, throughout stage 3 and stage 4 water restrictions, staff is recommending to lift the prohibition of the sale of single-use water bottles 1 liter and less, and also to include accessibility and mobility exemptions. Furthermore, if council is to proceed, staff is recommending further consultations with First Nations, businesses that are currently selling plastic water bottles 1 liter and less, consumers of plastic water bottles, Tourism Tofino, and the Long Beach Chamber of Commerce. So just to get in the nitty-gritty briefly, the legislative path charted out here is under the Community Charter 8.3.j, allows council to may by law regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements in relation to the protection of the natural environment. That said, this sphere is in concurrent jurisdiction with the province and does require ministerial approval. So if staff should proceed, if council should proceed, staff would come back to council with an amendment bylaw to be read first, second, and third time. Afterwards, we would seek ministerial approval from the province, return to council for adoption, allow a 6-month trial transition period for businesses to comply, and then furthermore, the bylaw would take effect. So with that, I have a recommendation on the screen for council to consider.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Comments, questions for clarity first, Mr. McCall, and then we'll go to comments.
Ministerial approval, how long would you expect that to take? In other words, if we decided to go with this, would it be in place for the next summer season?
Thank you for the question, Councillor McMaster, through the chair. It's hard for me to make that call at this moment. We are still awaiting ministerial approval on our wildlife bylaw, attractant bylaw. But I can return to council with a more definitive determination on that.
Thanks. I'm happy to make the recommendation. That's a question.
Let's just make sure anybody has any questions for Mr. McCall. I have one comment, would be stage 3. So we spent a lot of time in stage 3 this summer, and there were still water stations available for people to fill their water bottles. So, I wonder about exempting stage 3. That's my only comment.
Yeah.
If I may, thank you.
Please. Yeah.
Mayor Law, I will probably revisit that language in the amendment bylaw. We are having a look at the stage restrictions, and it will look different and sound different for next season. So in consideration of that, we'll bring forward language that will be a bit more flexible.
Super. And I just want to make sure that Councillor Steer doesn't have any questions or comments before Councillor McMaster reads the motion.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Law. No, just a quick comment that just in the most recent ACRD waste composition study, water bottles were still significant, plastic water bottles. I don't remember size, but certainly were still a consideration at the landfill, and we're not in the diversion aspect of that. So fully supportive of this recommendation. And I think I heard Councillor McMaster ready to make it.
Okay, move that staff be authorised to prepare amendments to District of Tofino single-use item regulation bylaw number 1277/2020 to include plastic water bottles 1 litre and less in volume, and that staff proceed with public consultation on the proposed amendments and report back to council on the results of consultation upon introduction of the amendment bylaw.
Second by Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? Super. All in favor? None opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. McCall. Moving on to 10.4, we have a zoning amendment, 565 Campbell Street. And this is second reading. We report from Mr. Thick.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. I think I have a presentation that Mr. McCall will just be bringing up. So as the title suggests, this presentation relates to the zoning amendment for the property at 565 Campbell Street. I believe this is part of the council's agenda package, talking about the second reading. A little bit of background here. It's been about a year and a half, I think, since this application was before council, so I'm not sure if all current sitting councillors have had a chance to look at it. So the zoning amendment was actually received on March 18th, 2022. Permission to proceed was granted on April 26th the same year, moving straight into first reading, which happened on June of 2022, June 14th, pardon me. And so since that time, there's been a few things that have happened. We've gone through a referral process. We've had a public information meeting on September 8th, 2022. We had a variety of technical studies come through. These are servicing briefs, geotechnical studies, some environmental information, and then some further conversations and refining of the community amenity contribution proposal. So this is the proposal. I'm actually going to go to the next slide for council's information. Maybe should have reorganized these, but this is the actual location that we're talking about. So 565 Campbell Street fronts both on Gibson Street, that's at the bottom of the screen, and on Campbell Street. The larger frontage is actually on Gibson Street, even though the civic address is off of Campbell Street. It's a bit of an oddly shaped lot, but it's one of the largest lots that's currently within the sort of the downtown area of Tofino. The proposed area for development is actually sort of in the, I guess, western wing that fronts onto Gibson Street. So it's about maybe a third or a quarter of the overall size of the lot would be subject to this rezoning. That would then be subdivided and the development would move forward as proposed should the application proceed. So I'll just go back one slide here. This sort of rough rendering kind of shows the approximate area of the development proposal and shows the kind of a 3D drawing of the proposal. Really what we're looking at doing is rezoning that particular portion of the subject property to facilitate the development of what is actually kind of a multifamily development, but it takes the form of 3-story row houses. So there'd be 20 units in total. The bottom story would be single bedroom units, and then the top 2 stories would be a combined 2-bedroom unit. So each of those slices of the row house form there would have 2 units in it, for a total of 20 units. 2 of the units would be sold to the Tofino Housing Corporation. The Tofino Housing Corporation would then bring those back as price restricted resident restricted units. That's our current conversation. That's a little bit different from the initial offer that was brought forward to council the last time this was seen by council, and I'll discuss that a little bit later in the presentation. Here's our location again. So moving forward, taking a quick look at some of the guiding policies that we use to initially evaluate these, starting with the vision to action. This is our ICSP Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, sort of the highest level of plan that talks a lot about the general direction for the community. And it is generally aligned with a lot of our policies and seems to be an appropriate fit for what we talk about as the ecological and fiscal limits to growth. This is something that's not very well defined, but kind of comes up with every single development proposal. And this one in particular, its location, the density, and the particular type of development seems to fit quite well with what we would currently consider our ecological and fiscal limits to growth when compared to other development proposals currently in the pipeline. The official community plan, there's generally good alignment with the OCP for use, density, form, and location. This is kind of the more dense development in the area that we want it, kind of close to the downtown area. One of the things that came up with council at an initial viewing of this application was a conversation around potentially some additional green space, either in the parking lot area or elsewhere within that particular development area. It doesn't seem like there's, based on the current geometry of the development area, there doesn't seem like there's very much opportunity for additional green space at this point in the development of the property. However, through later phases of the development, it's likely that there will be significant, kind of on-site green space amenities for residents of the property. At this kind of point, if we were to add additional green space, my understanding from speaking with the applicant is that we would be losing either one or two of the housing units, or also potentially losing some parking. So at a certain point, it does become a bit of a design question, but currently the proposal put forward kind of considers as much parking and housing as can be provided as opposed to additional green space. And staff are generally supportive of that at this point, understanding that later developments on the same property may provide opportunities for green spaces throughout the overall property. Looking at the housing needs assessment, it's generally in line with priority actions. These are smaller units, affordable units. Market units may be more accessible to current community members, and the provision of a couple of affordable units as well is in line with many of the priority actions within the housing needs assessment. The multimodal transportation plan kind of points out a few opportunities here, largely for frontage improvements on that particular side of Gibson Street. There's a fairly good pedestrian walkway and boulevard on the other side of Gibson Street, but it may be an opportunity for some frontage improvements on what is the northern side of Gibson. And then there's also an opportunity for pedestrian and potentially cycling connection from Gibson Street through to site Vincent. That's a priority action within the MMTP that we would like to take advantage of through this rezoning process. And the land use and demand study generally meets the relevant kind of goals and targets for residential development. Taking a look at the zoning for this particular property and our proposed zoning. Current zoning is RA2. That's a fairly low density residential zone. Under the current zoning, I believe the property could likely be subdivided into either 3 or 4 parcels. So still for this particular area of Tofino, those are fairly large lots. So fairly low density at the moment. The proposed change would be to a comprehensive development zone for that portion of the subject property that's affected by the proposal. And that chart there kind of shows a few of the major differences that we've been considering. Some things that I want to point out to council largely would be a fairly significant increase in height, so an additional 10 feet in permitted height. A significant reduction in the front yard setback. We would be looking to put all the parking behind the building, so the building would actually be moved forward to front right onto Gibson Street. And then there'd be an addition of 10% of the lot coverage, and then fairly significant addition in density going from about 2 dwelling units to 20 dwelling units, so an addition of 18 dwelling units within that portion of the property. Having a quick look at some planning considerations, form and character is something that council has commented on before, or the councillors that have seen this application before. There's no development permit area that applies to this section of the property, so there's no further opportunities for council to discuss the design. Typically for downtown areas, particularly for multifamily developments, we do have development permit area guidelines in place. These are things like the Main Street DPA or the Gateway DPA. This property is fairly close to the Gateway DPA, but this particular part of the property is not impacted by that development permit area. So I would note that the applicant has provided some updated renderings, a few more colors, sort of a landscaping plan that was not previously seen by council. Staff had a look at the proposed design from the Gateway Development Permit Area Guidelines. In general, it meets the Gateway DPA guidelines. However, the one kind of fairly significant departure is that the Gateway DPA guidelines really look for about a 2 to 2.5 story form. This one is looking at a 3-story form, so a little bit of a discrepancy there. And should we move forward with this proposal, we would look to some sort of development agreement or covenant prior to final reading to ensure that what's being presented to council through the rezoning is largely what's built, potentially a little bit of wiggle room for the applicant. Taking a look at some of the housing, generally an appropriate form and density for the location. It's really supported by our guiding documents, so it's a much higher density form of housing than is typical for Tofino. We see a lot of single family residential development, but this is also an area where we are looking at to densify a little bit more. Servicing, this is obviously a significant consideration. So there has been servicing brief provided and the modeling is completed. There's no concerns with the distribution, but there will be some additional consideration for drainage, which this is typically more appropriate at the subdivision stage when we're really drilling into the nitty-gritty of how the civil servicing will work. And there'll probably be some covenants and some very specific things related to stormwater management and drainage that need to be worked out, not only for the stream that kind of runs behind the property, but also just for how we're going to manage the way that stormwater from that particular property is going to either move into the stream or into other infrastructure to manage that. Again, I just want to note once more, because this is obviously top of mind for everybody at the moment, when we talk about servicing briefs and modeling and things like that, what we're looking at is really our distribution infrastructure. We're not necessarily looking at our supply. So through our covenant that I mentioned earlier, our development agreement that would likely be developed prior to final reading, we would also ensure that the applicant understands that, you know, if it comes to the point where we're looking at a subdivision or a building permit and the District of Tofino Infrastructure and Public Works says, hey, we're not actually sure we have the supply, even though the infrastructure is in place, we might not have the supply to actually adequately service this development. We may be looking to deny a building permit or at least holding off on a building permit at that point in time. That'll be a part of that covenant I mentioned. Again, some further planning analysis, traffic. We have a letter of opinion that indicates that there's no significant impact to traffic on the surrounding area and it won't significantly impact adjacent intersections. I can't remember the exact language, but within the letter of opinion, it notes that there'll be likely 1 or 2 more vehicles on the road every 4 to 5 minutes, which isn't considered a significant increase to traffic in the area. There's 20 stalls proposed, so that'd be 1 per unit. This is considered appropriate by staff, largely due to the proximity to the downtown core. There will also be pedestrian bicycle amenities that will be secured through a development covenant. So the idea here is that we have 1 stall per unit, which, depending on who you ask, may or may not be enough. However, we're looking to ensure that we have an adequate density of housing and a nice balance between parking and housing, as opposed to using more of the land for parking instead of housing people. So no significant impacts were also noted from the environmental impact assessment that was provided. The drainage, as I've mentioned, needs to be carefully managed. The EIA noted that it would be advisable to not push any of the drainage from this particular development into the existing stream drainage that runs kind of behind the proposed development. So this will be something that we look to secure through the works and services agreement as part of the subdivision. Maybe that's through detention tanks or bioswales or other ways to manage the stormwater. And from the Tofino Volunteer Fire Department, BC Ambulance, we didn't actually have a response to the referral, but no concerns are noted. There is an existing fire hydrant on the north side of Gibson Street, a couple 100 meters down the road. I think it's kind of right behind RPM. And I believe it's not on our GIS at the moment, but I believe there's been another one installed since the development of the Gibson Heights neighborhood. And from a flooding and tsunami perspective, it's well outside of the flooding and tsunami zone, this proposed development, so we don't actually have any concerns there. And there's quite reasonable access to the community hall, either via pedestrian access through behind the elementary school, or even if you were to ride a bike or drive your vehicle, it's within access if that needs to happen as residents in the case of an emergency. The CAC, so the community amenity contribution, I want to touch on a little bit. Our CAC guidelines really suggest $9,000 towards affordable housing initiatives or an indoor recreation facility and 2 price restricted resident restricted units. There were some initial conversations between the applicant and the THC that suggested that 4 units would be sold to the THC at a below market rate. The THC would then move through their policy and their process to sell those to eligible members of the community. However, due to increased borrowing and construction costs, the applicant has asked to reduce that number to 2 units. Those 2 units are in line with our CAC policy. So from a staff perspective, it does generally meet our policy. We're also looking at accepting a stat right away for pedestrian access through to Cyper Crescent, as well as some cycling and pedestrian amenities in general. So from a staff perspective, we're generally in line with our CAC guidelines. However, my understanding is that there's ongoing conversations currently between the THC and the developer. From staff's perspective, we want to make sure that we get at least a minimum of 2 price restricted resident restricted units. However, if the applicant is able to work out an opportunity to provide more than that to the THC, then we're certainly in support of that as well. We would be looking to develop a housing agreement that will be brought forward for council's consideration prior to 3rd reading to secure those 2 units, just to make sure that we have that all legally papered up as is required. And the last bullet is actually, it says no other contribution is being offered beyond the 2 units. I was meaning that to refer to the suggested $9,000. However, I would note there is a statutory right of way as well as some other pedestrian bicycle amenities that will be considered as part of the application, which may be considered as part of the CAC as well. Last slide, I think on this one, so we did hold a public information meeting in lieu of a public hearing on September 8th last year. There was 9 attendees, 2 members of council and 1 staff member. The primary themes were really concerns about, sorry for the formatting on this slide, I'm not sure why this happened, but it's concerns about drainage, clearing, impacts to wildlife, parking, and disturbance of adjacent properties due to vehicle lights, putting a fairly large parking lot essentially behind there. There's some properties on Cyper Crescent that have a lot of vehicle headlights shining into their back windows. However, aside from all that, there was a lot of general support of the proposal in the comments. One of the things that staff will look to do through the development covenant would be to require screening on the north side of the parking area to really reduce the impact of vehicle lights on the adjacent properties. So quick summary, looking at next steps. Generally, the proposed development is supported by guiding documents and submitted technical reports. The proposed CAC is generally in line with adopted guidelines. There's general support at the public information meeting, some considerations for drainage and privacy that need to be incorporated through either the development agreement or looking at the works and services agreement. And then we will also need to be looking to draft a housing agreement prior to 3rd reading and prepare a draft development covenant prior to adoption. And then if this continues to be supported, we'd be looking to adopt the zoning bylaw, the housing agreement, and the covenants, basically all the same. There's the recommendation up on the screen there. And if there are any questions, thanks for your time and patience with my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Thick. Looking to council for questions for clarity first, and then we can do comments if there are any. Any questions for clarity? Councilor McMaster and then Councilor Sawyer.
Me first.
You first.
Question. Who gets to choose which units for the housing corporation?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. That would likely be a conversation between the district and the developer. We would likely incorporate that into the housing agreement. It's not something that's been discussed. We just talked about a number at this point, whether they're going to be corner units or middle units, where exactly in the development they will be, has not been discussed. That would be something that we would probably talk largely with the developer as staff about, but we would like to bring the THC into that conversation as well, if they have a particular preference. Yeah, that's what I can offer at this point.
Councilor Sloman.
My question was regarding the pond that is on the other face.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, through the chair, that the pond is not really considered as part of this phase. However, particularly through the subdivision or through the development covenant, we would look to secure that drainage. The drainage is a little bit complicated through this property. It largely drains everything from parallel 49 coming down to Gibson Heights and then kind of moving through that stream area into the pond and then through other private properties underneath the highway and out towards the inlet from there. The drainage is kind of a bit of a key piece of this one. And our recommendation, at least at this point, is to try to avoid adding additional drainage into that stream. However, through this development, we would be looking to secure rights to, effectively public rights to drainage. And I'm not sure exactly what that would look like, but kind of securing that pond and the stream to ensure that essentially the owner of the property or any future owner of the property doesn't simply fill that pond in and cause all sorts of issues for the stream.
You were saying that the housing agreement and a couple other things would be approved at the same meeting. Which point in the process is that 4th reading, adoption, 3rd reading? Which meeting might that be?
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. Sorry, I kind of rushed through that. Typically, with a housing agreement, that's a separate bylaw. So what I've tried to do is when we get to 3rd reading of a rezoning, which is generally council is usually kind of interested in moving forward at that point, I'll bring the first 3 readings of the housing agreement bylaw to the same meeting so that they can be considered in concert. And then the next time the application appears, we have the housing agreement ready for adoption, 4th reading, and then we also have the rezoning at 4th reading as well, ready for adoption. So they're adopted concurrently, and then we typically get a sorry, I'm losing my words right now, but some sort of a guarantee from the applicant's lawyer that the housing agreement will be registered on the property title at the same time as the rezone is adopted. So it's just a way to kind of line things up process-wise to make sure that everything's adopted at the same time. And it's also generally nice for council to get eyes on the housing agreement prior to third reading of the zoning bylaw, just to make sure that everything is working as council wants.
Thanks.
Councillor Steer.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I only have a comment, no question at this point.
We can move to comments unless there's somebody with a comment, a question for clarity.
I have one more. Do you wanna?
Go for it.
So I see a bit of planting between the street and the buildings. Is that on district property or would that be on? Because I imagine like it's pretty close to the sidewalk.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's particular. I believe those plantings would be on the private property. However, we'd be looking for if we were to incorporate sidewalks, we would like them to be part of public property within the actual Gibson Street right away. It's a fairly large right away, so I think we could incorporate that. The specific details are a little bit tricky to understand exactly where things are going to be placed, but it would be likely that at least some plantings will be on the private property side of things. Those will be managed by the Strata Corporation for the future development. However, there would be probably a sidewalk just the other side of that that's publicly accessible and
Question, go ahead.
Is there any way, because they're doing landscaping, is there any way at this point to encourage them to have water catchment so that it can be successful?
Certainly, yeah, no, thank you again for the comment. Typically through these kinds of development processes, we really encourage developers to look to any sort of water conservation measures that we can. Those often include things like cisterns or pipe systems if they're looking to do that kind of thing. In this case, to be candid, we don't like those are kind of the sketches of the landscaping plan that we have. We don't actually have any specific details around what the landscaping is going to look like. That could be something that I'm happy to continue having conversations with the applicant about and looking to secure any kind of considerations for catchments and things like that through the development covenant. I'm hesitant to get too deep into the specifics of things that could be considered part of the stormwater management system. Those kind of overall systems are generally require quite a bit of civil kind of thought and engineering behind them. And so they take a bit of time and a bit of finances, and usually we hold off from requiring that level of detail until a subdivision plan comes forward. But one way for us to, I guess, consider that adequately at rezoning is to incorporate that into our development covenant that we've been talking about. So that's a provision that I'm more than happy to kind of consider in there. And certainly we would want plantings to survive and hopefully continue to look good being on that sort of pseudo boulevard side of things that's drawn there.
Super. We're finished. Do you have a question? Comment.
A question.
Go ahead.
And question for clarity that I've heard concern on from the community. Sorry, best way to say this. So without having the green spaces included, I've heard some concern, but I believe my understanding of the development is even if the green space was included due to the proximity of the building, the mature trees would not be able to be kept. So the lack of green space is not saying that they're choosing the units over keeping mature tree growth.
Thank you for the question through the chair. I think I'm hesitant to speak too much, but my understanding is for this particular type of development, that lot is largely going to be cleared. There's going to be very special considerations to kind of work around the stream. It may require actually provincial authority or provincial permits through the Water Sustainability Act. That's based on the recommendation of the environmental impact assessment. But if there were to be green space incorporated, it would not be mature trees. It would be a lawn or perhaps a small set of swings or that kind of thing. I think is more likely what it would be. So in this particular case, I don't see how this development can move forward without clearing that section of property almost in its entirety.
All right, thank you. I as a follow-up, I had heard concern about how it would be possible to maintain the health of the stream without maintaining at least some mature tree growth, given that the root systems are crucial in that sort of soil composition for the stream bed. And just the pond and everything. This is just feedback I've received from the community.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the comments. I think a lot of what we understand is based on the environmental impact assessment that was prepared and provided to us. And so there will certainly be significant considerations. The stream itself is not, it shows characteristics of the stream, but it doesn't provide significant habitat for any sorts of larger mammals or even smaller mammals. It may provide some habitat for birds and some amphibians, though my understanding is that none were observed during the course of the environmental impact assessment. That goes for the pond as well. It's fairly vegetated all around there, so I think it maybe provides, some suitable habitat for migratory birds from time to time, but there's not a lot of significant habitat value there. I don't know the history of that stream, how healthy it might have been 50 or 100 years ago, or even if it existed at that time, or if it's kind of come into existence as a result of natural drainage patterns happening as Tofino continues to develop. But it's certainly an important part of this development, and ensuring that any sort of development moving forward or any considerations are done with adequate recommendations from the environmental impact assessment and any registered biologists that we might need to have on site will be an important part.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let's move around for a quick round of comments. Jermaine, Councillor Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Law. Yeah, just a couple of comments. One, I'm supportive of the project as we have from the beginning. Just a quick comment, a couple on the B2A around, and I think Mr. Thick, you brought this up on several developments around defining what we actually mean by ecological and fiscal limits to growth. I think, we keep talking about it, but we've never actually drilled down and figured out what that actually means to give it a more definitive definition. So at some point, we should definitely be working on that. And the other, both of these next comments relate to the MMTP, the multimodal transportation. And it's around the frontage issues, which we have talked about in terms of sidewalk or pedestrian walkways on 4th Street, which would be connected in, of course, on the south side with the existing. I'm wondering, I guess it is a question in the end here, but it's certainly a consideration that we need to be thinking about, because that is a major school pedestrian corridor that transverses through there. So I'm just, maybe it is a question, unfortunately, around what, if there's any discussions around that connectivity on that sidewalk on 4th Street that would connect in there, because it is, in terms of a traffic impact, it doesn't talk about how significant that is as a corridor for a large percentage of our school population at Wickeninish Elementary. And that is all the comments I have.
Thank you for the comment and question, Councillor Steer. I'll try to address it a little bit. Typically, when we look at frontage improvements, these are usually acquired through either subdivision or building permit. That's what our subdivision development control bylaw permits us to do. Rezoning, we tend to focus mostly on use and density. However, through this subdivision process, my understanding from talking with the folks at Infrastructure and Public Works is that we would be looking for frontage improvements. Typically, what we're allowed to request is anything that's along a public facing frontage through to the midline of the road, those kinds of improvements. So it's difficult for us to, it's difficult but not impossible, maybe is the right way to kind of describe it, to look for us to add additional frontage improvements on properties that are adjacent to the development property. I'm not sure, again, I don't have a specific design in mind or anything to share with council, but maybe there's another opportunity for us to put either traffic calming devices with crosswalks on top of them, or something along those lines to ensure that there's adequate access to the other side of Gibson as well, which has a little bit more well-developed pedestrian infrastructure at this point in time. Look for us to continue sidewalks, going, I guess that'd be sort of down towards Campbell Street on one side and over towards 4th Street, I guess, on the other side. We would like to, obviously continue pedestrian infrastructure, particularly in that area of town, as it's significantly lacking, to say the least.
Super. All right. I have 3 quick comments. One, I agree with staff. I find this is the most supportable housing development in the queue right now, so I'm very supportive of seeing it move forward. Working with the developer. I'm appreciative of Mr. Thick's clarification of the servicing brief regarding water as flow, not supply. I was a little concerned with the report basing the water servicing on a 2014 CORS report, but it really does, does clarify that for me. So thank you very much. And I do, at 24 cubic meters per day, I think this is supportable, regardless from what we know of our low flow summer. Just a comment from me on the housing units, the Tofino Housing Corporation units. My understanding previously, and this is just my understanding, that they were 1-bedroom units before. I just note with the reduction that it would be my hope that at least one of those units be a 2-bedroom. So maybe we can cut the difference. And I understand the Tofino Housing Corporation is working with the developer to hash out those. So we'll see hopefully some meeting in the middle there. So that's all my comments. I'm very supportive of this. Anything else from council? Councilor McMaster.
Yeah, I generally support the project, and I was really excited at first reading to see that 4 units were going to be offered to the Tofino Housing Corporation. So let's say I'm disappointed now that we're down to 2 units now. In sort of the developers world, that would be considered the barest minimum. And a lot of communities are insisting on 30%, 2 units is 10%. So to go from an offer of 20 down to 10, I think isn't very good and doesn't reflect on the emphasis we put on affordable housing in this community. So I would like to see some discussion with the developer on that.
Excellent. Any further comments from council? Okay, comments, Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, just quick. I concur with Councilor McMaster on the desire for a little more than 2 minimal size units for affordable housing, the price restricted units. And then I have to say I'm supportive of it, despite the impact on clearing of the lots. I think one thing that gets missed when we add this kind of density to the downtown core, 20 units that are compact and put on a lot in the downtown core is 20 units that aren't out further out in the less serviced part of the community. And so as if we add density to the downtown core, it despite its environmental impacts, it is relieving the pressure on the environment in other places where density might not be as compact. So.
Sorry.
I'd just like to point out an observation reflecting again concerns I've heard from the community that existing buildings are going to be kept on the property that is adjacent to the proposed development. Just in case anyone who read the report in public missed that.
Thank you. Without any further comments from council, would somebody like to read the recommendation? I can do it from the chair. Or you can do it.
No, my
Go.
voice is gone. So I would normally help you here.
It's all right. That's all right. It's an easy one. I can do it. Okay, yeah, from the chair, I move that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1320/2022 be read a second time. Councilor Thomas seconds it. All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. Do we have any business initiated by council members? Any committee or external appointment verbal reports? Yes, Councilor Salmon.
Well, I went to the Arts Council roundtable, the second part, and that was a really successful meeting. We talked about decolonization, the structure of volunteer organization. And this is not like to deal with race, it's about like the structure of these organizations and how that can maybe encourage volunteerism, because they're having a really difficult time getting volunteers in those areas, and we had our first meeting in May, and then this was the follow-up meeting. And so in May, they established a website where volunteers of these different organizations can go and kind of coordinate different events around town. And then they could also kind of borrow each other's volunteers. And that's been very successful. And then I also met with Tourism Tofino today. And I thought it was really exciting that Brad went to the Indigenous Tourism BC Annual General Meeting as a representative. And I hope I get this right. Usually only Indigenous communities have been invited, or Indigenous tourism organizations have been invited to these meetings. But because we're an ally, we got invited, and we're one of two communities that is, or two organizations that is not Indigenous led, that was was at the meeting. And I thought that was exciting. And it's a really great thing for Indigenous tourism.
Super. Thank you. Councillor McMaster.
We had a meeting with the Tofino Housing Corporation yesterday. Just let you know that Headwaters will be opening for occupation sometime in March. And then the second complex at Headwaters should be opening later in the summer, June or July, I believe. And in the first compound, most units are taken up. There's 2 still available, so it's looking like there's going to be full occupancy by the time people move in.
Excellent. Any other reports from council members? Seeing none. No unfinished business. Question period. Mr. McCall, do we have people signed up for question period?
Thank you, Mayor Lai. I will now do a call open for question period. If there's anyone attending online via Zoom and would like to make a question, you can do so now using the Q&A function on Zoom. You'll need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll now do a call. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no current questions at this time.
Okay. Then, yes.
That was specific to those attending via Zoom, and there may be
Oh,
individuals.
of course. That's the call for the public. Now's your time to ask council questions. You can come up and you got 2 minutes to ask a question, and the councillors can try to answer. Please, come on.
I'm sure to listen.
I feel like you were looking at me, but yeah. You say no. Yeah, you get hand up. You're like, I want to do it. No, okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, fair enough. We are a scary group. Super. Then we are going to move into closed session.
I guess I have a question.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, if you have a question,
Yeah.
this is great. We love questions. So you can stand up.
Oh, wow.
You state your name
Yeah.
and your address.
Sure.
And the agenda item you would wish to speak to ask a question.
Okay,
And council may or may not be able to answer. I'm just warning you.
sure.
So then we'll try to answer, or we may defer to try to answer at a later time.
Sure. My name is Aaron Tilston Renikin, live at 310 Lone Cone. I have to say what I do. Is that correct?
No, you don't.
No, okay. I don't know how this works. I want to talk to or have a question about the short-term rental, the opting in thing. From what I've been reading, how I understand is like the principal residence thing comes in May. So are you planning on having decision before that in terms of the date, or is it like, yeah?
So we have not decided on a date for process. We've begun an initial conversation about that. But I think my understanding is the council would like to delay that a little bit until they have a little more information. So at this point, council has not decided to set a date for either opting in or staying opted out for the May deadline. That's but that is going to be a very significant conversation going forward, and I'm sure that answer will come.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
Sorry, Chair, just always want to ask questions.
Right, you can ask a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
As long as it's the agenda.
Yeah, no, this is the last one, I promise. The follow-up is, I didn't realize, I heard you mention before that you, as a council, have actually looked into the principal residency thing before, along with zoning. I didn't realize that. I'd never read that. Do you know anything that came of that? I just, unless I misheard that, that's what I heard as I was listening.
Yeah, council has been discussing and sorry. No, I thought it's.
No,
Man, I'm seeing things. I thought. I'm just stuck their hand up. Stuck their hand up. Holy smokes. No, so council has begun the process, requested staff to look into, as I noted, different avenues of possibly further restricting STRs, and looking into the principal residence requirement was one of those. Was one of those explorations. Now that has been halted because provincial legislation has changed. Now, previous to this legislation, there were some questions about the legality of that, but now that the legislation is province-wide, and of course they make the law, so now there's not a question of the legality of it, it's a question of.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So there's that's where council sits right now. The opportunity is there. Council will have to discuss it, and we'll have, of course, more public input.
Cool. Thanks for all the hard work you guys do. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Super. Thanks for your question. I love it. I love it. Gosh, we gotta make it more inviting. We gotta have some treats or something. I'll have to get a treat for questions. So would somebody like to move the recommendation to move us into closed session?
I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 90 of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to 1A, personal information of an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position or as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position given by the municipality. 1C, labor relations or other employee relations. 1G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. 5, receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And you can thank Oyster Fest to a lack of projection today.
Second by Councilor Master. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. We're moving into close. Thanks for everybody that came. We're gonna have a short recess, 5-minute recess, and then we'll be in the closed session.
Yeah, I